a revolution.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Angela Valdez, and I am in Portland, Oregon. I'm one of the Bernie volunteers here from Bernie 2016 TV, and we are all over the world helping you today to hear from Kevin Stein. He is running for Congress for U.S. Senate for Oregon. So we'd like to welcome Kevin now. Kevin, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
We also have a couple of people helping us behind the scenes. We have John Ellis, and we also have Jesse, our assistant producer. And today we have our on-air comment moderator, who's our co-host, and my best buddy now, John Spalding. He will come on and ask some questions and comments. So hi, John.
Hey, Angela. Hey, Kevin. Hi, everybody out there on Bernie 2016 TV.
So John's going to take questions and comments that you guys give to us in the YouTube chat today. So if you hear something from Kevin that you would like to address with him, please enter those comments. You can also look at his website. If we want to show slide 2, John, his website is www.kevinstein.org. And you can check out how he feels about issues. You can look at some of the things he's trying to do in Oregon to overcome some issues we've come to face not only in Oregon, but also nationally. And he's going to also talk about how his views are parallel to Bernie Sanders, which is why we're all here. So let's start with Kevin, and let's have Kevin just talk for a few minutes and tell us a little bit about himself. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, hi. So I'm 30 years old. I was born in Oregon, and I lived here till I was around 10. And then my family moved to Oklahoma, and we lived in a very small town in Oklahoma. Like my graduating class in high school was about 35 people. I decided I didn't want to be a farmer, and I lived my life in a very low income household, and I've always wanted to do something better with my life, and I had the opportunity to join the military, so I joined the Navy in 2004. And I spent the majority of my time in Connecticut. I was also stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and in Portsmouth, New Hampshire for a few months as well. So I served on board submarines, and I completed 3 deployments. And so I had the opportunity to see things that I never would have saw otherwise. I've been to London and Paris, Scotland, Norway, a few other countries. So I served 9.5 years, and I decided, to move on, and I moved back to Oregon, back to Medford actually, and from there I just got my degree, and about pretty much when I first came back to Oregon, I wanted to be involved in government, so I started going to the local city council meetings, and I got friendly with a few of the city councilors, and then turned out that the area where I lived in Medford, there was a slot open. The person that was there decided not to run again. So I ran, and I knocked on 1,200-ish doors, and I won the election, and so I've been a city councilor since the very beginning of 2015.
Well, congratulations on that. I mean, from what you've talked about, the reason I wanted to let you just go over your personal history real quick was because of the fact that a lot of your personal history and what you've experienced from the public education system growing up, both in Oklahoma and also in Oregon, and also your service in the military and your service in public service just within the local community, just stepping up. I think it really is going to speak to a lot of our viewers today, and I wanted to give you a chance to share that story. So I appreciate you going over it. I'm sure it's something you repeat often when you're speaking publicly.
Well, the story doesn't change.
Yeah, and that's why I really appreciate you taking the time to go ahead and do it again. So what we wanted to do is talk about a few of the things that were reasons that you decided to step up, not only in service for the military, but also public service by running for city council and now for Senate, because you're standing up in a in a particular part of our community and taking a stand and taking a sacrifice that a lot of people don't choose for themselves. A lot of people go into the private sector or have been encouraged that the way to have a healthy lifestyle is the private sector. And so I really appreciate you coming on to tell us about that stuff. And I'd love to hear from you. What was it that inspired you to start working in the city council and also to run for city council? Because there must have been something that, you know, some factor that just made you go, I gotta get into this now. Like, now's the time for me to try to run for something.
Yeah. So I come from a very apolitical family. You know, it wasn't anything I can really remember in high school. You know, people caring much about politics. When I joined the military, I kind of saw I was becoming more interested. You know, I joined in 2004. And that's where you really saw, you know, the Iraq War, where that, you know, instead of us being, you know, greeted as liberators, as Dick Cheney said, you know, it was a really different story on the ground. And, you know, I was following that very closely, you know, as I was in the military and throughout the years. In 2007, I was a very early supporter of Barack Obama. You know, I really loved his message. I remember a very specific forum he was at. So Hillary Clinton comes out and says, "I'm running to be president of the United States." You know, and then she does her spiel, and then Barack Obama came out and it says, "I'm running to change the country." And that was just such a resonating force, where it wasn't about him. It's about what can we do together. And you know, from there I was really hooked on politics. And you know, when I got out, I was looking. You know, what could I do? Could I be a candidate? Could I help someone else out? And you know, when I saw the opportunity for myself, you know, I thought, you know, what can we lose? What can I lose? And you know, I read up on you know, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. You know, I worked on, you know, messaging, really talking to people. You know, you can't, the message can't be your message. It has to be, what do the people want to hear? You know, what do they want in government? And I think a lot of people, a lot of great candidates, you know, people I know, choose not to enter what they call the arena. But I would love to see more people. It doesn't matter what your background is, but more people that really care about the issues say, you know what, win or lose, it's worthwhile to put my name out there, to knock on the doors, to meet with the media, and see what I can do to really make a difference.
Yeah, standing up for others when you feel called to is something that I think this election has shown that is almost a defining factor between whether you're a Bernie Sanders supporter or whether you're not, because you stand for equality, you stand for integrity, you stand for honesty, and if you're not hearing it from the candidate that's standing there, it's really hard to keep trusting them to that position. And I think this election has shown that none of us are looking at those jobs anymore like career jobs. They're not fooling us anymore. The public understands that we actually all have a say if we step up and try and jump in and fight. But it does call all of us, right, to get together and to donate, to help each other. And so that's one thing I wanted to quickly mention. On our slide, you know, one of the slides, slide 2, just has his website. I just wanted to reiterate that we make sure we give a chance to donate to Kevin Stein's campaign today while we talk about the issues. And that if you hear something that he says and it really speaks to you, please support him, because Oregon really needs someone in this position. And the reason we need someone in this position is we've had someone who's been there for a long time who has said they've been for progressive values, but as we found out, it's come to our attention that they are not as progressive as we need them to be. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what we want from Oregon after this video, but we're going to show a video called Re-Levolution, I think is how you would say it. It's got Mark Ruffalo, and he is one of the people who is marching right now with Democracy Spring. That's going on from April 2nd to the 11th. People, thousands of people from all over the country are marching from Philadelphia. Yeah.
It's actually the march is from the 2nd to the 11th, and then the sit-in is where Ruffalo will show up with many others, and that's from the 11th through the 18th. All right. So
I was
it's
getting to
actually,
that. I didn't know Mark was not marching. I thought he was
not
marching
yet.
with
He
them.
may show up. He might show up, but we don't. He hasn't shown up yet. They have guys that are showing, guests that are showing up along the way.
I see. Well, let's
Anyway.
encourage him to show up.
Yes.
So anyway, this video is a little bit of them talking about Bernie Sanders, but also they're speaking to the people that Kevin was talking about, people that we really want to have start standing up and saying, if you have a passion for others, if you want to help our communities have more fair situations, stand up and take leadership. We'll join you. So this is going to be a quick little video before we take off on Oregon.
And I'm Mark Ruffalo. Bernie Sanders comes to us in a moment of a crisis of credibility in the American political system.
According to Gallup, less than 20% of the country trusts our government to do what's right most of the time. Rasmussen reports only 11% of likely U.S. voters think Congress is doing a good job. And what's our response to that? The citizens of the greatest democracy on earth. We check out. Only about 50% of the country votes in our presidential election. Even less vote in the midterms. Compared to other democracies around the world, that is a terrible turnout. What's happened to us?
I think people feel like they've given up on the system, and that's exactly what the bad guys want us to do. They want us to give up on the system.
It is astounding to me from a moral perspective that folks stay up nights figuring out how they can give more tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and large corporations, and then come back and try to cut food stamps for families who are hungry, for kids who are hungry.
There's just no justice. There's nothing that means anything. You know, it doesn't mean it. You break the law, it doesn't mean anything. You hurt people, it doesn't mean anything. You steal from people, it doesn't mean anything.
I always thought, man, I wish a politician would say, I'm going to bring ExxonMobil to justice for paying millions of dollars for propaganda to lie about the environment.
There is evidence that suggests that way back in the 1970s, Exxon's scientists did studies and told the leadership of Exxon that climate change was real and potentially very, very dangerous.
He's saying, yeah, that's
wrong. When you finally hear someone who says, no, that's illegal, it does mean something, and I'm going to make sure it means something, then you have a champion.
What this campaign is about is saying loudly and clearly, it is not just about electing Bernie Sanders for president, it is about creating a grassroots political movement in this country.
There's never been a time in recent history where a presidential candidate has had more enthusiasm amongst young people, showing up and donating in unprecedented numbers. This is the promise of democracy, that we can have justice and equality.
It is time to break up the largest financial institutions in this country.
We can have a government that serves the people, but it takes more than one person demanding it. It takes more than 50%. It takes as many as are able, and that's what this political revolution is all about. Not me, us. Bernie Sanders' campaign has sparked a fire.
I believed it in my whole life, that we are in this together, not words. The truth is, at some level, when you hurt, when your children hurt, I hurt. And when my kids hurt, you hurt.
That's the direction our culture and the generations coming up behind us are headed.
To this new kind of decentralized movement where we don't burn out. You don't have to carry the load all the time. I don't have to carry the load all the time. My brothers and sisters don't have to carry the load all the time. Sometimes you carry, sometimes I carry. We carry all together. And that's how we make change today.
I believe that what human nature is about is that everybody in this room impacts everybody else in all kinds of ways that we can't even understand. It's beyond intellect. It's a spiritual, emotional thing.
And what I think of it is a re-love-evolution instead of evolution. It's really based in a kind of love. This is the future of the Democratic Party. We want to take care of each other.
So that video was really, I found it really inspiring because it was kind of encompassing everything we're talking about today when it comes to Oregon. You know, we've been working so hard as a state for a very long time. Many people in the country may not be aware, but we have a lot of things that others don't have. A lot of things like mail-in ballots and checks and balances that give us a chance to make sure that our vote is counted. That other people will stand for hours out in the cold or the heat, and so we're calling on a lot of other people to stand up, right? In Oregon, to start stepping into positions like city council, like you've been doing. So you've chosen to not only do city council, but now you've moved on to running for Senate. Would you like to tell us the reasons you've chosen to run for Senate?
Sure. So I was really surprised. So, Ron Wyden is the current senator. He's been in Congress for 35 years, and around 20 of those have been in the United States Senate. And personally, he does his town halls, and he came to where I'm here in Medford. And I was really surprised because, he was getting asked questions, and they were really just hitting him really hard on some of the stances he's taken. And these weren't Republicans; these were people in the environmental, caucuses. These were people that were labor. These are people usually in the Democratic column that were really just, having strong feelings about some of the stances he's taken and how his supporters aren't necessarily for these stances. And so I went home, and I was really trying to learn more about what these positions were that he was taking. And what I learned is the biggest one by far is Ron Wyden's stances on trade deals. And you hear Bernie Sanders talk about this very frequently. He talks about NAFTA and CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations to China, and what destruction that has caused our country. Manufacturing in this country has largely went away because what's happened is large multinational corporations have relocated. For them, it's about where can we get the cheapest labor. And when you open up trade to Mexico and other countries in Central America, that's where companies will go, and that's what we've seen is companies have left the United States of America to go somewhere else where they can, countries that pay their workers, $1 an hour, or actually probably way less than $1 an hour, and they have terrible working conditions, no health care, things like that. And what we need in our country is fair trade instead of free trade. And now Ron Wyden is probably the point man for what's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So the Trans-Pacific Partnership is another trade deal, and it incorporates many countries in Asia, most notably Vietnam. And he's pushing it, and he says that we just need to do it. And if we don't, well then, we can't. He said specifically we can't walk away from the deal. But as we've seen, is labor unions, environmental groups say we cannot do this. People like Wyden will say, well, there's environmental protections, but there's nothing that's enforceable. So not only will we have jobs shipped once again from America to another country, but they're going to go in locations with really no regulations and really make greater the cause of climate change.
Yeah. You mentioned one thing about when it comes to the TPP that stuck out in my mind when we talked a little bit a couple days ago is that when you mentioned where Ron Wyden's family lives and the fact that he may not be as native Oregonian now as he was when he first ran or when he first was elected in the special election. So I was wondering if you could tell us, since you've moved here, you've been here for a while, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because many people are not aware that Ron Wyden is not here all the time, and he's not easily accessible to voters all the time.
Right. So, I mean, this is an issue that I generally don't bring up, but I hear a lot from fellow Democrats. So, back in 2005, Ron Wyden remarried to a someone, I can't remember her name. Her name's actually Nancy Bass, and she's from a family that owns a bookstore in New York. And she apparently she's worth millions of dollars. But anyway, there's a big concern about how Ron Wyden says, well, I'm from Oregon, but his family doesn't live here. Now Wyden says that he does town halls and he's around here a lot. I mean, people can come up with their own take on it, but it is a little odd to say, yes, my family lives in another state, but I'm still, a full Oregonian. I mean, you have to spend time with your family, so it's a little weird. It's a little concerning. I'll give you a couple examples. In Indiana, there was a man. His name was Richard Lugar, and he did kind of the same thing where he didn't even own a place to live in Indiana, and voters, voted him out in large part because they're like, well, how can you represent us if you don't even know us, if you don't even live amongst us? A big deal was made in Kansas as well with Pat Roberts, but he managed to survive his re-election campaign.
So those are, we wanted to just quickly touch on that because those are things that when we're looking at our candidates and we're looking at long-term politicians who've been in power for quite a long time, some of us most of our lifetime, right, or most of our adult lifetime for millennials. And, a lot of us don't know that history and don't know that times change, people move, things change, and that should change for our government too. We should be having fresh new voices, and we should be having new solutions, new ideas coming to the table. And when our politicians treat the job of government service like it's a career, like they're in the NBA and they're going to get some sort of great package deal if they stay there for a while, they're limiting anyone else's chances of having the democracy, see their voice, hear their voice. We've talked about big money in politics lots of times, and the reason that's a problem is because it's shutting out other voices. And when you have career politicians continually getting to stay in the position they're in, sometimes they do good, and sometimes they start to make different choices. And I think Ron Wyden is someone making some clear choices when it comes to the TPP, and the TPP affects Oregon greatly. It's something we have to really think about. We have a lot of ports right now, like that we've had to fight. People have had to fight to keep oil from crossing, a giant freighter from going up to the Arctic. I mean, we've had to really take a stand as constituents, as voters, just as human beings on this planet together. And it is a bummer that Ron Wyden, it's like he was in power during this entire time, and it hasn't seemed to persuade him in any way. So it's one of the many reasons that we are hoping that Kevin Stein here will become the new senator for Oregon. If you guys would like to check out his website again, it's kevinstein.org to check out a little bit more about him or to donate to his campaign. But I'd like to go to John Spalding now. We've talked a little bit and covered quite a few issues, and so I was hoping we'd have a great set of questions now. So go ahead, John.
Oh, man. Yeah, you guys did good waiting until now. There is some great stuff in here, Kevin. So first, Tim Nichols says, Semper Fi, fellow veteran. He also says Ron Wyden is a TPP pusher, and we got to get him out. So he liked that. Think It Through said, hey, a fellow submariner said, ask Kevin to give us the submarine chant. Tell him that vulgarity is okay, I think. You game? And if not, that's okay.
We're the Secret Service. We're supposed to keep that stuff under wraps.
Good job. Good job. You passed the first test.
Good answer.
Meredith wants to know if you're a Bernie-crat.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Starry wants to know any news from Ron Wyden. There's a couple comments in here. Sek Hamara and Meredith Buckley and Starry Morales were both talking about him dodging you on debates. And so is that still going on? What's the status of that?
So, I mean, this is a normal part of politics. When you're up for election, you actually sit in a room with your opponent, with the people challenging you, and you have town hall, you have moderators, you get asked questions, and then you talk about what direction you want to go. I mean, a Senate race you win. That's 6 years. It's important that we allow the people to see the candidates side by side and talk about the issues. And what I did is back in January, I saw him at a town hall, and I said, I gave him a letter, and I said we should have town halls. I didn't hear back from him. I emailed his staff. Didn't hear back from him. I called them. Same old. The other day, he wasn't there. He was in his office from D.C., but we were interviewed by Willamette Week, which is a paper out of Portland, and we had the opportunity to ask each other a question, and so I asked him, if you have the tagline, Ron Wyden's little slogan says "different like Oregon." If you want to claim you're different, why are you doing the same thing that every other candidate seems to do, where they ignore their competition? If you're doing such a great job for Oregonians, why not, allow us to stand side by side and have people ask ask where we are on the issues? And he did such a, so he got asked that question, and he did the political speak about it, and it was really disheartening. He said, well, anyone can ask me a question at a town hall, or I'm busy.
Yeah.
And
whenever you do that, that they're that there's a confidence problem with them, and it's not you, it's them.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I just saw in here that we would be happy to host a debate for you guys for any 2016 TV if you want to challenge Ron Wyden to it, and see if he's interested in coming on.
And there's another question in here, and I just need to find it. It's from Starry Morales again, and she just wanted to know, and this goes back to Oregon and about you representing the state in the Senate. Ask about what are your ideas to control rent costs. She says Oregon's experienced some rising housing costs, especially in Portland, and what are some of your ideas and thoughts around something like that?
People talk about this being a Portland issue, but this is an Oregon issue. Here in Medford, our vacancy rate is like 1.5%, and so, it's extremely hard to get a place to live. There's very long waiting lists, and renters can be very, you'll have one vacancy, and you can get 30, 40 different applications, and so with your chances of getting something is very slim. What we really have is one is we have a supply problem. Some of that might be a land use issue. Some of that might be, well, actually a lot of it's a land use issue. We have what's called the urban growth boundary here in Oregon. It's very in the weeds, but it makes it kind of difficult to develop land. Different areas, it's a zoning issue. So I would like to see us kind of open up how our land use system goes. We don't have to have it like wide open like you see in Texas and Florida, where they have big issues. But we do need to look at opening up to allow developers to have more leeway on building more. So there's more supply, and we have to have more supply. We can actually put more people in homes, and hopefully lower costs as well.
Well, we do have a problem here too, where we have a lot of developers that are turning around and taking something that was actually a decent building that could have plenty of housing for affordability for a group of people in, like, say, in Portland, for example, or Ashland, and instead what they're doing is they're tearing it down, they're putting in something that's actually much less quality work, and then turning around and charging, 10 times what they were going to charge the original building, and they have the same occupancy. It's frustrating for many people, and I'm sure this is something that is a nationwide problem as well, but definitely in Oregon, it's happening all over. It's happening in Roseburg, it's happening in Goose Bay, and
Bend is real bad too. I think Bend is like 1%.
Yeah, and we definitely need we need that to be addressed for sure in Oregon. Thank you, John, for that. Did you have any other questions or comments for him before we move on?
Well, there's a ton, but we can come back later. But there's one more. Do you support the legalizing marijuana?
Yeah, we have it here in Oregon. I voted for Measure 91, and Medford is a pretty conservative area, And yes, it was a statewide measure, but a lot of municipalities like Medford have resisted even medical marijuana. We voted for medical marijuana in 1998, and we're just now getting dispensaries. So it's been a tough road for a lot of places in Oregon to even allow people to have access to it. So I support it here in Oregon, and I support legalizing it nationwide. We've seen that prohibition doesn't work. All we do is we really waste police time, with these small time users. Really, there's better things for police to do than prosecute marijuana users.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Okay, thank you, John. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about next was, Kevin, you got a chance to go to the Portland rally that Bernie was at recently.
Yeah.
And I was also there helping out and volunteering. I'd like to hear what you thought of it, because it was quite an experience personally for me. But what was your take on it?
Well, the one thing they don't show you on TV is someone waiting 3 hours in line and then 3 hours in the stadium for people to show up. He's got Social Security and everything now. Not Social Security, Secret Service. But when it finally started, there were some great speakers beforehand. What was really interesting to me was in Oregon we have what's called the Working Families Party, and they had a young man named Cole Richardson, and he came up there fired up. And a lot of people, Oregon has a closed primary, so everyone has until April 26th to change their voter registration if they want to vote for Bernie. And I've seen a lot of people do that, which is great. So a lot of people that are independent voters or non-affiliated have moved to be Democrats so they can vote in this election. But he comes out, and it's one of those things. I've seen enough speeches. I'm sure a lot of people other people have. You kind of know what he's going to say, but you still love hearing it.
Yeah,
and, so
and it was definitely exciting to see. The one thing that a lot of people have heard about was that there was a bird that came and hung out with him. And it was true. He did have a bird come and visit. And we have the video of it and we also have pictures of it, because it's one thing that I think has really shown that Oregonians have not only been progressive, we really do care about the environment and everyone in it. And I think that what happened in this rally kind of spoke to that overall feeling for us. So I'll let that run and we'll talk about it after.
I want every kid in Oregon and Washington and Vermont to understand that if he or she does their schoolwork seriously, does well, takes school. What? Oh. Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh. I think there may be some symbolism here. I know it doesn't look like it, but that bird is really a dove asking us for world peace. No more wars.
So that video, I decided to show the front view instead of showing my own personal video, which was the back view. Mostly because I felt my laughing and cheering and screaming was just too loud, and I didn't think John would be able to work the sound out. So, but it's out there on YouTube if you feel like hearing me scream and shout. It's a great back view of it, and it shows the bird from the back end. But what was amazing about that speech for me in that rally in particular is there was a lot of points that Bernie made that he makes every time that get stronger and stronger in each rally. And I think it's because he does change his speech to fine-tune it to the people he's talking to every time. And I love that about him because there was a video I just recently saw of Jane Sanders talking about how when she initially started working with him, she had all these great ideas for helping youth, and she came in and told him about him, and he said, "That's awesome. That's wonderful. What do they think about it?" And I felt like that was such a great message of how we really need politicians to think, right? And I feel like you've done a great job in Medford recognizing that that's something that's really important in order for some growth and some actual movement to happen down there in a quite conservative valley. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what are some of your favorite Bernie Sanders policies that you like to talk about with people?
Really, primarily, the one thing that is such a huge issue even now, you know, is affordable health care. I know we had the ACA, you know, under Obama and a Democratic Senate and House of Representatives, but we're still not good enough. We're still not good enough in the healthcare field. We have more people covered, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're so much better off. We have a system where people say, well, I should go to the doctor, but what's my deductible? It's just a bizarre system we have. You know, other countries have systems where you say, I need to go to the doctor, and they go to the doctor, and they don't have to worry about a bill that's, you know, hundreds of dollars or $1,000 plus. And we still have 10% that don't even have even the minimalistic health insurance, and we have people that do go to the doctor, but I think they said about 1 in 5 people can't even afford their prescription pills. I mean, you should not be able to, you know, your livelihood on healthcare should not depend on the amount in your bank account, and that's what we're seeing now. Even with the changes in the bill, I mean, more people are covered. There's still lots of states that didn't have the Medicaid expansion where you know, people that are very poor could get health coverage. A lot of you know, red states still don't allow that, which is really just absurd. But that's the one striking thing for me. I also love, you know, raising the minimum wage. Wages have not kept up with inflation at all. We used to be a country where someone could work as a milkman and provide for their wife and 2 children. Now people are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, you know, just to get by. We really need to look at what we can do with the minimum wage, you know, pocketbook issues. And that's what Bernie really speaks to.
You know, in Oregon, I know that we recently had some things passed that are going to increase the minimum wage here. Mm-hmm. Maybe not to $15 an hour, but it sounds like it's incremental. But you mentioned a couple of things that right off the bat, as a U.S. Senator, you probably would have a lot more power to be able to move forward if Bernie was president. And so I appreciate you being able to take a time. I know I made a broad statement when I asked you to name your favorites, but I wanted to see if you would name stuff that you could actually immediately move on. And those are really things that you could have some movement on if you were a senator. So let's make sure we check out his website. It's kevinstein.org, and make sure you donate. And I know that people have been pushing to donate for Bernie Sanders $27 when they can, but I would like to challenge people to donate $27 to Kevin Stein and Bernie Sanders when you donate. So I hope you'll consider that. I know that we're getting close to the end of our time, so I wanted to make sure that we go over a couple things. Bernie-crats are people who are Democrats, is that correct, Kevin, that are wanting to support Bernie? Because I wanted to be clear on that.
It's Democrats that are supporting Bernie Sanders. Yes, and there should be more of the elected officials. A lot of them just kind of fell in line with the establishment, but that's their decision. As you see, as you see in state by state recently, that the general public doesn't much care what their governor or senators, who they're supporting. They know that they support Bernie Sanders regardless of who their current elected officials support.
Yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to keep calling out politicians, right, and find out if they support them. And clearly, when someone like Ron Wyden is going for the TPP, he's not going to be someone that's going to be jumping up and down screaming Bernie's name. So, I mean, and we want more of those people in Congress, right? So we want to make sure everybody knows. I know that Kevin said it earlier, but we've got the Oregon primary coming up on May 17th. Slide 17, John will show people that the April 26th is the date to be registered as a Democrat so that you can vote for Bernie Sanders in the Oregon primary. I also put some information up there. OregonVotes.org is the website you can go to actually register and get information, or to check your registration info. I would recommend everyone across the states to definitely do that. With as many fraud issues and human error issues that have happened in so many elections, it's a good idea to double check, and Oregon is, we're really lucky with one of these types of things in place where we can quickly check on our own or our friends and make sure that you are registered and ready to go. So, Kevin, I wanted to say thank you so much for being on here before I turn it over to John Spalding, because I've been looking forward to having you on for weeks, and I had to keep my mouth shut at the rally because I needed to volunteer and help, and I had just wanted to hear what you were doing for Oregon. So I appreciate you coming on today and talking with us, and I'd like to see if John is ready for some comments.
Oh yeah, always. So there's some great stuff in here, and some great questions are coming in, Kevin. First, how much help do you need in the state of Oregon? And a follow-up question to that is, considering that Oregon's pretty progressive, do you need a lot of donations from out of state? And that's from Nikola Tesla.
Interesting. So the question was how much help do I need, and how much help do I need, and how much money do I need to raise? I think those are kind of the questions.
Yeah, and donations from out of state, how does that impact, or how does that help?
I mean, I'd say probably like 90% of my donations are from people that live in Oregon. I mean, those are the people I talk to. I haven't been calling anyone out of state asking for donations. How much help do I need? I mean, as much as I can. What I love to hear is people that I talk to that also say, I talk to a couple of my friends and let them know that there's a person running. We can do better in the United States Senate. We shouldn't just settle for a corporate Democrat like Ron Wyden. We get a real progressive, someone that wants to help, go progressive causes on terms of trade and minimum wage and things like that. I mean, I welcome everyone's support. And you can support without spending any money. You can support by talking to your friends, or really something that's very useful are things like letters to the editor. No matter what city you live in, you have a newspaper, and letters to the editor is a free way of letting more people know that there's a challenger out there.
It's funny that you should mention that, because my next comment was Dennis Schmidt said, well, Bernie-crats, we always start petitions, and so let's start a petition to get Ron to debate you. So I wonder if we could do that and get it in time to help make that happen. These next couple questions are back to the environment and back to climate change, just so you can collect some of your thoughts on those. Brenda Brown wants to know where you stand on the Keep It in the Ground legislation written by Bernie and Jeff Merkley.
Yeah, so the Keep It in the Ground legislation is written by Jeff Merkley, and I think it's co-signed by Bernie Sanders. But it's about no new permits. There's enough stuff out there that they can accumulate enough oil and other things. However, the one thing, and this is very specific to Oregon, the one thing that Jeff Merkley does not want to keep in the ground is what's called LNG. Here in Oregon, this is a huge thing for environmental groups here in Oregon. We have a pipeline, and so we have LNG coming all through the state. all throughout the entire state and going to Coos Bay. And environmental people do not want this to happen. But Ron Wyden, it's such a political thing. So he goes to Coos Bay area, and he goes to the businesses and says, yes, I want this to happen. But then in public he says, well, I just don't know. Well, it's not going to happen in Washington. It's not going to happen in California or Canada. So that leaves Oregon, the only place where they can go through, and he seems to be supporting this. This is something we should not do. If we wanted to have the keep it in the ground, we also need to include the LNG pipeline.
Gotcha. Okay. This, I think it seems almost like a softball question, but what is your position on fracking on indigenous people's land? And that's from Randy Roberts II.
Don't do it. I mean, this is
right. All right.
This isn't like corporations' land. There's some thought out there that if there's some sort of natural resource, that we should just extract whatever it is, whatever's there, regardless of who owns it or who occupies it. We need to get real here. We don't need fracking to oil prices are already low. We're doing just fine. We do not need fracking. We do not need LNG pipelines, so on and so forth. We need to really work on renewable resources.
Cool. And Nicola wants to know, what are some of your positions, or how strong are you on combating climate change? So we started off with fracking and with taking to the fossil fuels. What are some ideas that you have towards climate change?
Well, Oregon, I don't know of any other state, but Oregon really leads the nation on certain bills we have. We know we're getting rid of coal plants. That we have one last coal plant. We put legislation to end that. We have a different bill. I think it's not a healthy climate bill. I think it is a healthy climate bill. To increase the standards of companies to really combat climate change. So I want to see the policies that we've implemented here on Oregon to go nationwide.
Cool. This is a tough one. It's about democratic socialism. This is from Think It Through. Do you believe in democratic socialism?
I mean, I have a little bit of trouble with all the isms. When Bernie says, when Bernie talks about some of these countries and what all the good stuff they can do, Norway, Scandinavian countries, I'm on board. I think someone asked me, are you a capitalist or whatever? I take the issues as they are. I don't try to ingrain the issues in some sort of ism.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Starry says that she's for you now even more than she was. She appreciates your real answers. Do you support single payer?
Of course. I mean, I talked about before. That's what we need to go to. We need to get rid of this. We need to improve the ECA, or the best thing is just take Medicare and make it go to a limit of 65 years old. Just delete that sentence so everyone can have Medicare for all, single-payer health care. That way we actually cover everyone. We can lower the price it really costs per person. That's one of the big charts you always see is how much per person it costs in America for health care. And if we went to a Medicare for all program, you would see that cost really be cut.
Yeah.
And cover more people.
Cool. Right. A shocking change that might actually be effective. Starry wants to know. I gave Starry a lot of questions. She's been very active, and I'm assuming that she's from your state and also going to be voting for you. So, what are you going to do to battle drug abuse and addiction? It's a huge problem in the state, regardless of party lines. What are some of your ideas on that issue?
You have to take it as a health problem instead of a criminal problem. Addiction is a disease. So what do you do to treat diseases? You don't put people in prison. We have a very high recidivism rate. We take these people, we put them in jail for drugs, but we don't treat anyone. We really need to look at what works and what doesn't. And putting people that use drugs in jail has not worked, will not work, and so we need to look at putting more funding into what can we do to help these people out. Addiction isn't something that just goes away. It's for many people it's a lifelong problem, and we need to help build support networks and give the tools for people that have run into trouble in their lives and gone to drugs to help them out.
Yeah, we need to consider that these are lives and not just someone trying to get their bottom dollar. A lot of the private corporate or private prison industry and the private health industry have really come over and run over other people's rights. And so you're talking about mental health, and mental health can't be achieved if the people who are in charge of the system are just trying to make a profit and then turning around and donating that money to a candidate who is going to continue to let them treat people inhumanely and treat them like they're never going to be able to live a successful quality of life if they have the right support for the issues that they need to address. So that was a great point. I actually was hoping someone would ask about that, and I was hoping to have enough time because I have a friend that works down in Southern Oregon, and he works very hard in the drug and treatment center, and he wants people to know this exact message. And I think he appreciates that you're giving it such an honest response. So, John, did you have any other questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple more no, it's okay. There's a couple more hot ones for Oregon. I was just going to diatribe about how important it is to invest in our citizens in this country. And I really think that's where the tone of Bernie's campaign is going. I can definitely tell from you, Kevin, that you're going that way. So it's so exciting to hear that there are people out there that understand the importance of using our tax dollars to actually take care of our own. Jill R. says, what about the river disrupting dams in Oregon? The native people want them removed. Do you have an opinion on that issue?
Actually, just yesterday they came up with an agreement to remove the dams. So I mean that's a settled issue. Unless that's called the Klamath Basin. That's the one I know of. If there's another one in Oregon, please let me know. But there's been a long-standing issue, and the people there came up to an agreement. It was just really weird. So the people there came up with an agreement, and then it went to Congress. And we have one Republican congressman. His name's Greg Walden, and he didn't agree with the decision made by the locals. And so it didn't happen. It's really just a bizarre scenario. These are people that spent many years coming up with a solution to this, and one Republican in Congress says, "Well, I don't want to do it." So who cares about the work they did? But it looks like we came up with a solution that Kate Brown announced yesterday.
Great, good news. Randy O. Roberts II, would you support an Oregonian affordable housing bill?
Yeah, I mean that I have no problem with that. We need to. What's government is about what works, what doesn't. It doesn't matter where you are. Whether you're on the local level, the state level, or the federal level, you see what works and what doesn't, and you either fix it or leave things alone. In Oregon, we have a housing problem. So what can we do to fix it? Is it, changing our zoning laws, our land use laws? Do we need some, legislation to help with, price controls or something like that? I don't specifically know what the answer is, but I know that what we have on the books now is not working. We need to move to changes for the betterment.
All right, thanks, Kevin. And we'll do one more, and then we'll push it back to you, Angela. This is from Nicola again. Do you oppose Citizens United? He thinks some Berniecrats might not necessarily want to overturn it.
Well, if you don't oppose Citizens United, you're probably not a Berniecrat. I mean that's such a huge issue.
You give grace 3 to censors.
Yeah, it is insane to me to see our presidential process, and especially on the Republican side, like, oh, some billionaire supports this candidate, end up being like a huge deal, because now that person can pour millions of dollars into some black, it's called dark money, where no one knows where the money came from or anything like this. This needs to go away. Actually, last week's night with John Oliver had a great show about money and politics, and how candidates and politicians just spend so much money on the phone talking to millionaires, and it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It needs to be changed. We need to throw it out. We need to have a real process where people don't spend all their time raising money.
Well, and on that note, Kevin, as you mentioned that, I'll let John know real quick to start loading the video. It's a new video that came out from Bernie Sanders' campaign called How to Win Elections. And it really shows exactly what you were just describing, and I think it gives a good overview of what we're up against and what you're up against right now.
A lot of talk about high-dollar fundraisers in this campaign, and how the Clinton campaign hosts some events where some people get special access for bundling up to $27,000. This all plays into how our country's corrupt campaign finance system operates. The legal contribution limit for an individual in the primary election is $2,700. But campaigns like Clinton's encourage well-connected and wealthy people to bundle contributions in order to gain influence they later hope to cash in. When elite bundlers like fossil fuel lobbyists or Wall Street bankers bundle contributions of a certain amount, often more than $10,000, they can unlock access to the candidate. That's why Hillary Clinton often hosts fundraisers where bundlers get access to special events, photo opportunities, and a chance to peddle their interests and issues. We do things a little differently on our campaign. We get the vast majority of our fundraising from people like you. Over 2 million people have donated to our campaign through over 6 million contributions of about $27 apiece. While the political establishment wants to win elections their way, we're doing it differently. Chip in $27 to our campaign and help us win the Democratic nomination.
And like I said earlier, if you're chipping in $27 for Bernie today, it'd be a great idea to chip in for Kevin Stein as well. So that video and many others keep coming out from the Bernie Sanders campaign, and it's pure brilliance, because they're bringing up all these issues that we are addressing, and they're doing it in a minute, just getting to the point. And I really appreciate that they're putting so much work into this. So I wanted to give you a few final thoughts, Kevin, before we end our show today, and just let you have a chance to tell the viewers and voters anything that you wanted to say before we are finished today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's been a great hour. I just have to say, the Bernie Sanders movement cannot start and stop with Bernie Sanders. You need to look all up and down the ballot and find out who supports the kinds of things Bernie Sanders supports. And at many times, it's not enough just to be a Democrat. As I've talked about, Ron Wyden, supports trade deals that ship jobs overseas. To me and to many Democrats, that's not the right way to go. So you really need to look at candidates all up and down the ballot, and maybe be a candidate yourself. Whether it be at the local level or whatever. So what I hope most comes out of the Bernie Sanders movement is that we see a new generation of leaders come in, step into politics, and do good things.
Thank you so much, Kevin, again, for being on our show today. We wanted to make sure we reiterated to Oregon voters that you have until April 26th to register as a Democrat. And then after that, your primary is going to be on May 17th. We should be all receiving ballots and our voter pamphlets in the mail. And if you haven't received one a week or two before, please make sure that you call the elections office or stop by, or find someone that's Bernie related online, a Bernie PDX or something, and make sure you know so your vote counts. I wanted to make sure, too, that other people know they can find more Bernie-crats online. I know that there's large groups of photo albums online on Facebook and different websites where you can find out where other Democrats that are standing up for Bernie Sanders are and where they are in the country and where they're running, so that you can support them too. Kevin Stein is one of them, and we really hope that we'll get to see him on the ballot in May as succeeding in victory. Because I know there's quite a few other people running against Ron Wyden, but we're not talking about them. They don't matter. They don't stand against the TPP. They don't stand for all the things that you do. So that's the point. So I wanted to show one little video before we go today. The last clip as we end our show is from one of my friends. Her name is Lori Enriquez. She is a musician here in Portland, a children's artist, if you will. She creates jazz music, and she was very inspired by Bernie Sanders, and so she wrote this beautiful song called Burn, Baby Burn, and that's how we'll end today. So she's a Grammy-nominated musician. I hope you guys enjoy. And again, thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on, and we'll see you guys again some other time.
1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. I read the books, went to school, sang the Kumbaya. Haven't felt such hope as I do right now. Something's been happening like never before. Time to step into the future through a brand new door. Burn, baby, burn. Listen to the people yearn. Burn, baby, burn. We're gonna act on what we learn. So I'm saying, what's so new about this old dude? Why has he been getting so much gratitude? Well, he's the one and only to say no thank you to the corporate machine he decided to eschew. Burn, baby, burn. Listen to the people yearn. Burn, baby, burn. You wanna pay the people what they earn. Where was he in '93? So happy that you asked me. Actually, he's been fighting for healthcare and the people's rights. More than 45 years he's been fighting these fights. Burn, baby, burn. Listen to the people yearn. Burn, baby, burn. History has affirmed. I got just one thing more to add to the score. People want a leader who will wage no war. We need peace more than ever, amen. And Bernie is the one who's proven time and again. Burn, baby, burn. Listen to the people yearn. Burn, baby, burn. It's high time for a peaceful term. Burn, baby, burn. Listen to the people yearn. Burn, baby, burn. You make the corporations squirm. Burn, baby, burn. We're taking action on what we learn. Burn, baby, burn.
Huge